Hello and welcome to my studio. So today I am going to make Blackout Poem ATCs, Artist Trading Cards. This is for the Around the Home Garden prompt for the Mixed Media Emporium Facebook group. So artist trading cards are 2.5 inches by 3.5 inches, and I pre-cut these from a piece of watercolour paper. So from Around the Home I have chosen some book pages. This is from a really quite old book, the other from a slightly more modern textbook. And I like to work with found words, with found poetry. I add it to my art journal pages. But what I'm going to do today is just to take these cards and literally just stick them down onto one of the pages. So I don't know quite what words will actually appear on my artist trading cards. So a bit of a surprise here, not looking at the words in advance and just seeing what I can make from it. So let's get started, and I will of course put this on a little bit faster because, as I always say, I work quite slowly. So for speed today I am just going to use a glue stick. It's a Pritt stick, and I'm just going to cover my card, trying to make sure that I don't get any blobs on it, and then I'm just going to lay the card down onto my page. And I'm basically looking for a bit of page where there's a lot of text. So if there was big gaps in it, or if it was a page that had some diagrams, I'd be trying not to get the diagram on it. I want a page that has plenty of words to choose from. So just putting it down and just making sure they're fully adhered. And I go on and do that with all of them. And you see I put them on different places on the pages just to make it random. So I'm not always putting it in the same place. And of course, any bits of page that I have left over will go into my collage box. So there I have them. That one looked a little bit squint, but I've just left it. And then I'm just going to cut round them so that I know exactly what I'm working with. Right, clear this lot away, and then I'm left with my card. So you see some are quite white, whereas the others are a more aged look to them. But I'm going to put different designs on all of these. So at this stage what I would do is just sit and look, scan the words on the page and just see if there's anything jumps out to me. So there, wisp jumped out, autumn jumped out, field, some other words. I might use some of those, I might not, but at the moment I'm just scanning, and then I will simply put a circle or a little mark just around the words that I might want to use. Now, because I'm doing it in pencil, it means I can go back and change it. So if something, I was going to say, if it doesn't make sense, then, you know, I could go back and change it. But in fact, a lot of found poetry, certainly a lot of my found poetry, doesn't necessarily make sense, but it conveys something, and that's what I'm looking for. So just going to work through each of these, although I will do that mainly off camera. You see there I circled encounter rather than encountered, because that made more sense just as I was kind of pulling this together. So you can kind of shorten words, harder to make them longer, but you can certainly shorten them. So just working my way through an initial scan to see what jumped out, and then what I'm going to do now is to take a thicker pen and go round them just so that I can see them more clearly. And of course you can run a few words together at a time. And as I say, it doesn't need to make complete sense by any means. You could also just draw boxes round, so you could do circles, you could do boxes, you could do hearts, fill in the heart shape and just have the word standing out inside it. So that one I simply put briefly on it. I just liked that, it was brief, so I just left that one word. I was going to leave it just with the rest of the text showing, but I decided instead just to use this black craft paint, and I'm just going to paint the rest of the card in black. This is me still using up some of these craft paints. They're getting kind of thick. I had to water that down at times, but I really want to use as many of these as possible. So I now have the Bloom's ATC stencil from PM Artist Studio. I thought that would just fit nicely on this particular card. Now, I do have a bit of a whoops moment here. I decided to use the sponge to stencil it. You might see that I've got an elastoplast on my left hand thumb, and I think just as I went to move it, my plaster actually stuck to the stencil and it dragged it. So now it's a case of what now? So what I decide to do is, I'm just going to paint the whole card out in yellow, so just around the words. Still a little bit black on my brush, but I'm fine with that. That was no problem. I knew that would kind of change the colour a little bit, and to a large extent I actually prefer it kind of toned down in this way a little bit. So it can get a little bit fiddly working around some of the words, but it's just a case of taking my time, and I will go on and do the entirety of the card, and I'll come back to it later on once it's dry to do a bit more work on it with that same stencil. Now, I don't mind if the words show through in the background. If they do, that's fine. If they don't, it doesn't matter to me. So here I'm just taking, it's a Faber-Castell brush pen, and all I'm going to do is kind of concentric circles here, and this is just about allowing the words to stand out by decorating the rest of the card just with kind of doodles. You could do Zentangle, doodles, anything at all. This one I just decided to do concentric circles, although you can see there that I go a bit off at times, but I'm not going to worry about that either. And this is one of these things that, it is almost, you can go into a Zen state just sitting doodling like this. I decided just to go around the words just to make them stand out that little bit more, and obviously I could have gone on and coloured the circles if I'd wanted to, but I left it like that. Here all I'm going to do is join up the words. Now this is quite a good thing to do if your words perhaps don't run in the order of the page, so if you want to do something a little bit different, you could have the words in different places on the page. You could even start at the bottom, go to the top, come back to the middle, and you could join them with lines and arrows such as this. So just looking at the next one and having a think about what I'll do with that. So I've got the Stays On ink in Pumpkin, and what I've got here are various tops of things, so again from around the house, that I am just going to use as stamps. So I'm going to try them on a bit of paper first of all, so just to the side there, and then I'm literally just going to use these to stamp all over the card, obviously avoiding the words that are circled, so avoiding my blackout poetry. And the idea of blackout is simply that you black out the rest of the text that's around it, but it doesn't actually mean that you have to literally black it out. You're just drawing attention to what's there. But even just putting a line around the word is sufficient to make it stand out. This was an interesting cap. I can see me using this in other things a lot, and even going over where I had already stamped, just building up lots of marks on the card. And although this little top was small and fiddly to use, I was actually able to use both sides of it and to get different marks from it. So again, that will be one that I think I'll be using in future. And I think just using the one colour there is quite effective, but you could use a different colour for each stamp. So going back to the one that I ended up painting yellow, I've got my Blooms ATC stencil again, and what I decided to do was just to use a pumpkin colour because I thought that would go nice against the yellow. And you'll see on here that there's actually 3 different sizes of blooms, so I use different sizes around the ATC. Now I have always tended with stenciling to dab. I'm now just using a piece of an old sponge here. In the end I start to actually more just pull it over the stencil to get it right through, and I love the pumpkin against that yellow colour. And again, I'm just going to work my way around the card using that stencil. I decided that I didn't like the plainness of the Briefly ATC, so I'm just going to take some white paint along with this Fingerprints ATC stencil, again by PM Artist Studio, and I'll leave links below. And all I'm going to do is to stencil onto the card with some white acrylic paint. And I was just looking at there exactly where I wanted it to go. Now I'm trying not to make this too thick. Wanted it to just see tiny bits of the black around it as well. So it's more like a kind of ghost-like appearance rather than it being thick paint going on. So just using the sponge to stencil through that. And trying to be careful to hold it in place. And there we go. I got out a white gel pen and I just wanted to highlight the word briefly, just going around that in a kind of sketchy manner. So I looked at this one for a little while and couldn't decide what I was going to do with it, and then I don't know why, I just suddenly thought I will put a face on it. So it's difficult to see where I'm sketching it here with the pencil. So I do take a ballpoint pen next, just a biro pen, and draw the face in biro. And there it is. So I decided that I would just have her hair going up, just so I could get a bit of colour on the rest of the card. The hair would go up and go around the words. And again, just using some craft paints here. At this point, I don't want it going on too thick. I'm quite happy for the other words to be showing through, but obviously going right around my found poetry words. So I do spend probably more time on this card than I did any of the others, simply because it was a face, and although I could have almost just left it there as is with just a hair done, I decided actually I wanted to do more on the face. So at the moment, just using some white just to get that down before I put some other colour on top of it. So I'll leave you just for a moment or two and I will come back at the end and let you see each card and I'll read to you what's on it. And of course, Nina will have a video this week and I'll leave the link to her video below, as well as a link to our Facebook group. Briefly, before in dreams through a dusty cloud I gaze upon clapping hands, this is brave. The encounter becomes softer. It was performance when there are objectives, kind, significant, from many. For joy, for delight, for the season, a heart that understands what passion, imagination chose me. The calculation of the whole process, the starting point. Autumn, transparent birch trees, ploughed fields, cider claret, themselves only interrupted from the wisp of hay. Thank you for watching. Bye for now.